Welcome, welcome everyone. My name is Beth Pollack. I am your host and presenter today. And so thank you for joining me on this recording through your KeyPro benefits, Resiliency Part 1. In June, or if you're listening to this in June already, June 8th, I will do the Part 2 session. We're here to look at the how, techniques for developing resiliency and a resilient mindset. For some of us, we may have been told, hey, you just have to think your way into a new way of being. Certainly, there's some therapeutic techniques, cognitive behavioral therapy, really give you a do. There is a difference between knowing and doing. And so for some of us, we're going to fall in the place where I really need to have some new habit formations or practices to be resilient. First of all, if you're listening to this and perhaps sharing it with a coworker, we're going to look at defining and understanding resiliency. What does it mean to you? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Often our weaknesses are our strengths, where we've learned to be resilient. For example, I'm a special education advocate and a mediator for children and adults, and that really has come out of the fact that I am dyslexic. And you'll see I won't read the slides, and I have other skills that help me be resilient in a world full of words. Also help me model that behavior to my children who needed resilience, as all children do in different places and spaces. If we look at this moment in history, a few years after COVID took over the world, so to speak, we know we do have resilient capabilities and capacity. We might be a little bit tired, so we could look at burnout. How do we become resilient and build that capability and capacity proactively in order to avoid burnout? So we'll look at that as well. So what are the strategies, the how, that we can find motivation during difficult times? Perhaps we don't even say something is difficult. We say it's challenging. Wordsmithing, word choices are definitely going to influence your resilience mindset. It's going to influence whether you have the thought power to be able to embrace a resilient, flexible, resourceful mindset. I think we can all agree these are behaviors that our teams benefit from, our households, our families, and communities. So we get over the win-lose mindset and see possibilities. So when we look at resiliency, it is the ability, so even capability, to cope with and manage both ordinary and extraordinary life events. I think we could all agree COVID was an extraordinary life event. We certainly, whenever we go through grief, we have an extraordinary life event, particularly if it's someone near and dear, someone who's significant to our life. And the ability to return, status quo may not exactly work for you. Return to a good state of being, being functional, being able to think, receive new information, do tasks, all the emotional and physiological things we need to do in order to do our responsibilities during the day, and including being responsible to our own mind, body, and health. So being resilient doesn't mean being free of difficulty. In fact, I hope at this point you take a moment, hit pause if you wish, listening to the recording. Take a moment to think of someone in your life, and we all have them, who is super resilient. You know enough of their story. Could be a grandparent, an aunt, a best friend, cousin, perhaps your partner, maybe yourself, who has an accumulation of what would seem like crushing challenges, crushing life story, but traumas or dramas or both. And they are able, in spite of that struggle, in spite of what we might have crippled us, that they can get through, gain insight, even see it as an opportunities, that those struggles or identifiable negative or tragic experiences actually made them, those individuals, who they are today, because they gained strength through that struggle, gained perspective, and developed new inner strengths, develop capacity as well as capability. So we're going to look at the 3 areas in life that require equal attention and balance to optimally respond to life's challenges and increase our resilience. We've got a body, we've got to use it, we know, in order, just as we age, to be resilient as we age, better balance, better heart health. We got to move it. For the very least, we've got to feed it. So we got to get nutrition, motion, play space with our bodies, so we can look at that. Emotional, certainly the fields of emotional intelligence and other fields have taught us much. We'll touch on that, of how emotional intelligence is so important to our ability to thrive and not just survive, to be able to interact with others in appropriate and authentic and functional ways. And once again, weather systems or set boundaries if necessary, or often, so that we can have the grit and the resources, physical, perhaps emotional, as well as gather our intellectual needs to develop resiliency. Intellectual, we live in a time of abundant information. And so this can be a little confounding to us, that I have so much coming in, so much I have to learn for my work, new acronyms, new programs, whatever it is, new, I'm thinking about the university there, new programs coming in and faculty and whole systems happening as I was reading in the news. What does that mean for my work and my work responsibilities? How can I be effective and efficient to take on the new responsibilities of whole new programs, whether you're the bursar or the registrar, or even the custodian? All of us have responsibilities in keeping a university going. So the capacity to be resilient is within all of us. Now, I will start with the premise that our temperament, our traits, are relatively stable through the course of our lifetime. So some of these things may mean that we actually are sort of secretly resilient. If we look at the introvert who stays perhaps very self-contained through culture or age or whatever it is, just not shouting out to the wind or interjecting and participating in bigger groups for energy recharging. They are resilient, perhaps because of their smaller internalized comportment, character, countenance, if you will. Others of us do have the ability to network and connect each other and make organizations more resilient, because we gather the stories of others, we see connections, our minds work differently, and we may not be good at, say, administrative tasks, we may really stink at it, yet we have the resilience to say, hey, let's try this. And so we can look at that as well. Resiliency can be learned. It can become a practice, and it can become a practice that we manage along, particularly that emotional component of it, by managing our stress and getting better skills with that. Maybe we need to take care of our physical body, and that will help our emotional health, or perhaps learning will help us keep our minds so that we're not living in a place of frustration and anger, or a place of worry and anxiety. So we can develop our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors that we use. We can choose those or refocus on them, develop what I like to call practices. That could be a change of habits for you, or an emphasis on the good habits we use to help us get through the difficult experiences, or even be preventative. So the difficult experiences aren't so big. They don't feel so big or overwhelming. So rather than feeling like we're swimming upstream in a flood, we realize we can go zig and zag, or sometimes hitting pause, staying on the side of the river, if you will. If we're thinking of flooding, we hit some pause, we assess, and then we move forward. So pausing can be part of our resilience protocol. So as we're looking at the resources of resilience, I like to say the 4 R's for children, and certainly we're seeing a time where there is greater mental health concerns, social and emotional mental health concerns for adolescents and young adults, quite understandable for many reasons. And we want respect, responsibility, resilience, and resourcefulness. So the 4 R's. So do we have a strong social network? Now, once again, I'm not talking about quantity. I'm talking about quality. So for many of us, I think during COVID, you may have taken advantage of Zoom, this platform, or other platforms, FaceTime with your phones, to gather with friends from farther away. We've certainly saw some resilience in having funerals or gatherings of others, to have those ceremonies that are important to us and have them virtually. Not a substitute or a replacement. It was a way we could be resilient, still grieve people, or at least have a ritual to acknowledge the grieving process and acknowledge individuals who are near and dear to us, and do that process. We do have some holes in that, and perhaps our resilience in reflecting on what didn't happen because of lockdown or other circumstances in, say, 2020 or 2021, we may want to revisit that to sort of heal our social network. If you're an introvert, you're far more likely to have a smaller group, a smaller social network, because you don't get your energy from partying or gathering, say, in public spaces or big events. I do want to recommend a book for you, and it's my favorite. It's funny, definitely going to be a summer read again for me, is Sorry, I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come by Jessica Pan. That's Sorry, I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come by Jessica Pan, P-A-N. She was an introvert who wanted to develop her resilience in regard to her introversion, so she could be with her partner, be in workspaces more easily. And she gave herself the challenge. So remember, we said physical, emotional, and intellectual. She gave herself the challenge to do one extroverted thing a month for a year. And her fish out of water story, someone going through the discomfort of challenging themselves, absolutely gave herself a very funny story and opportunities to grow. So I encourage you to have that book. If part of your resilience as a team or in your household is that you're working, living, negotiating life and participation with an introvert, with an extroverted team. So in that case, Jessica Pan is a perfect example of someone who could adapt to change. She gave it to herself as a challenge to build the resilience of what would normally for her have been an overwhelming social experiences. So she could have a more resilient, more connections in her life, professionally and personally. Now, can you laugh at yourself? Some of us, let's be honest, are perfectionists, and we would benefit, and our households and workplaces would benefit if we were recovering perfectionists. And so we could learn, rather than taking our mistakes and errors or accept as just a normal part of life, and so we can have some comfort. I learned from something that didn't work, rather than saying I'm a loser or a failure when something doesn't work, doesn't meet my expectations. So can I laugh at myself? Can I say, as one individual I coached would say, to get over perfectionism, the individual would say, that's silly. So she could laugh. She framed. Under distress, we lose our peripheral vision. And the words we say, which could be learned from our families or well practiced, particularly those that are victim words, or really those that might reflect a feeling of imposter syndrome. So we're not really owning our goodness and our efficacy. We may not be able to laugh at ourselves. So learning to laugh at yourself, not in a negative, you idiot sort of way, being able to laugh at yourself. And once again, I think those people who knew us when we were becoming ourselves, distinct from our families, so maybe our friends from when we were 14 or 15 to 24 or 25, when this part, the prefrontal cortex, was developing, those friends can reflect and laugh with us, with candor and not brutal honesty. Say, Beth, you've always been like that, both the good and the weak parts of ourselves. Now, someone I knew who was a playwright had a line in a play, and he said his line was, the pessimist says, please pass the pitcher. The optimist says, please pass the cream. The realist says, please pass the milk. So we could see, do we see the glass as half full, half empty? Do we see it as refillable? The resilient person might see it as milk and see it as refillable. So both some realism as well as the resilience of refillability. Or maybe do we even ask the question, well, do I need the glass at all? So curiosity is part of resilience. Confident. Now, in order to build a resilient attitude or have resilience in your place, I strongly encourage you to have an area where you are competent, that you get to invest in competence. It could be outdoors for that physical hiking or gardening. There was no surprise that during lockdown, more people did games, crafts, gardening, hiking. These are always and have long been activities that individuals do as matters of discipline and curiosity, and for emotional comfort. All the great smells, say, of earth and garden, even the probiotics we get playing in earth. So are we competent? And certainly for children, if we're looking at developing resilience in children or young adults, having place and space for that, giving them an opportunity to learn. I think gardening, since it's summertime, is a great place to develop that competency of growing herbs, basil, rosemary, oregano, and then cooking. So this is a how, this is a do right here, so that they have a competency that can really earn self-confidence. So we can't, trophies and external motivation won't do it. Can we identify our emotions? The Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, which has programs in some 500 or 600 elementary schools around the country, has an acronym called RULER, R-U-L-E-R, the measuring object. So can you identify your emotions? Some of us, by culture or experience, don't have a rich vocabulary for emotions. It may be we weren't allowed, there wasn't room for emotions. Maybe someone was abusive or substance addicted, and so the whole world, the family system, paid attention to that. Our own internal emotions didn't have place and space to grow, perhaps beyond fear. So identifying emotions. Can you identify your emotions perhaps when your senses are reacting strongly? So are you smelling things? Are you startling more easily? Are you having challenges, say, holding a pen and you have the dropsies? that might be an indicator that your emotions and stress is impacting your ability of time, place, space, and experience. Our health. Absolutely, we're still, many of us, behind on our primary care health and tests and vaccinations. And our children as well. Have you been to the dentist? Our dental health is important. Anytime our health is compromised, we have pain, so we haven't been physically active and might have some balance issues, or we get injured. Our health, pain is really distracting and can make it harder for us to think of solutions and embrace the creativity we need for resilience. So do you view your experiences as an opportunity for growth, or is it a calamity? Things are going to end for you. So once again, I do want to say this is being recorded. Please feel free to share works and things, practices that work for you. I have many to give you today. You have many that you've used in your own life. So, and I'll be looking at that and the chat feature as we go along. All right, so positive self-talk. I mentioned imposter syndrome. Some of us do have that idea. I have gotten all this way. Well, I'm not really that smart. We may discount our abilities, our skills, our looks, anything. Do you have positive self-talk? Now, some people will say it's got to be you rock, pom-poms, cheerleaders. It doesn't have to be that. It can be as simple as, do you say I can, or like that expression, that's silly when you make a mistake. Do you, when you make a mistake or someone gets angry with them, I'll try differently. Or for kids, we can often share with them, they can't do something yet. They can't ride a two-wheeler. They can't blow a bubblegum bubble. I'm thinking of younger years, don't know how to skip yet. Most young kids, if they don't know how to skip yet, they gallop and they say, see, I'm skipping. They're not really skipping, but that's okay. It's a not yet. So reframing is a not yet. I'm pulling back my hands as an example, because I want the resilient mindset of I am directing my life. I'm responding to things that happen in the environment, so I may pan left and right. That's because I know under distress, under a mindset when I'm not being resilient, which could be because I'm not healthy, I'm in pain or tired or distracted by something, a long list of activities I need to do, I will not be able to see the forest for the trees. Yeah, I can't see the forest for the trees. Under distress, which could be an attitudinal thing, like being afraid and sad and frustrated and then getting angry, we get angry, I lose my peripheral vision. It's fascinating how it works. And we have all sorts of old expressions that describe these phenomena, and now we understand what's going on. Can I learn from past experience? So do I say, once again, positive self-talk? That'll never work. I tried that before. Maybe I'm pushing back against something that is asked of me at work or from my family. That'll never work. We can even have family members, as we're doing, or friends, reunions and summer gatherings, who say, oh, that's a dumb idea. That'll never work. Why don't you want to do that? We need to set some boundaries. We benefit from setting boundaries and modeling to our children and to others a resilient mindset. So I can reframe it and say, oh, it didn't work before. And a power word here for resilient, and particularly resilient team mindset, is to say and rather than argue with but. And this time we have a better pump to blow up the floaty. This time I have made sure we have plenty of batteries for whatever, or plenty of marshmallow sticks if I'm thinking of the family reunion. And this time, if we had a failed vacation or gathering, everyone's older and wiser and learned from last time. We'll pack the right clothes. So we can learn from past experiences, the painful and the successful. Please understand that our minds pay more attention to the negative than the positive, which is protective and not particularly resilient. It's protective because it is important to remember that if I eat that beautiful red holly berry from the tree, or if I was grog and grog at the cave, folks, and I ate that red holly berry, it looks beautiful. It's going to make me sick. I'm going to get all scratched up from those pointy, beautiful leaves. And so that's important to remember. So some of our systems that are really hardwired into us, particularly our fight, flight, or freeze systems, have a hard time looking at the positive. So we need some practices for that. And I do want to give you, in developing a resilient mindset, as I'm giving you lots of examples, a habit formation formula. This is from Dr. Peter Gollwitzer, who taught at New York University, not far from where I live. And he made a formula that may work for you. If A happens, then you'll do B to achieve C. It could be as straightforward as, if A happens, if something that frustrates me, or let's take the perfectionist recovery mistake. If I make a mistake, I'm going to say that's silly, so I can see the learning opportunities and be kind to myself. If A happens, I'll do B to achieve C. If A happens, something that's challenging to me, I'll ask what, instead of why is this always happening, I'll ask, what can I do now? Change the question in order to see what opportunities or creativity resources I have. So I've got my social network. Who do I need to call to help me out of this situation or think differently about the situation? I'm not thinking well or thoroughly right now. So I can connect with others. And once again, this is scalable. So it may be I connect with a few others, and maybe I connect with a very big group. And maybe I connect with one person who connects me to the big group. Resilient mindset. Communicating effectively. The resilient mindset is calmer and has more capacity and capability to speak. I think the resilient mindset is abundantly curious. And once again, those of us who might fight, flight, or freeze, particularly the freeze aspect of it, if I ask a question, will I look dumb? Our egos like us to be right, and in relationship, often we do all sorts of mental gymnastics and protective, defensive mental exercises in order to avoid looking dumb or ignorant, certainly in an academic environment. My sense of humor is full of wit rather than sarcasm. Sarcasm is cynicism. Cynicism is part of being a wreck and burnout. REC, you have reduced efficacy, exhaustion, and you may have cynicism. Sarcasm is aggressive behavior at the very least, and it is not going to build your team up and build those communication and great resources that you need to help you to have your resiliency team for yourself. Wit, however, is playful, it's connecting, and so maintaining a sense of humor. I must say, for many years, I did arts advocacy work with adolescents and you know, my resilient mindset with teens who want to do everything and don't really have the experience to do everything. I did have an expression, a meme for myself to keep my mindset with appropriate expectations for them, which was love all of them, trust none of them. In other words, yeah, and yes, there were children, students I trusted. However, I also did trust, I did believe that their priority in life and what was going to happen in their minds and their body was continuous learning, and they were going to make mistakes along the way. So I could compassionately interact with them, love them, and avoid getting so frustrated with them when they did some things that were yucky or foolish or wasteful. and stay with them. So resilient mindset, I wouldn't stay in the anger mode. If they wrecked something, I could go, okay, here's how we're going to fix it together. So accountability. So a resilient mindset is not doing everything yourself. It's accepting my limits, my skills, that my strengths are my weaknesses. In other words, things I might not know how to teach someone else to do very well, and my weaknesses are my strengths, because those are areas where I've hard learned or can understand that someone has a weakness that can make it harder for them to do a task or pay attention or understand the assignment. So our positive self-talk. Now, some of us may find in the how-to of developing a resilient mindset, we may need to journal, and our hope at least one great English teacher in your life who really helped you learn the who, what, why, where, when, how, when, can edit what we're saying. So if your self-talk is full of shoulds, should is great for safety. Should means you're thinking that should be like someone else. I should be able to do this. It's really can be a very caustic and shaming and blaming word. So for a positive self-talk, I may eliminate the word should. Certainly to have positive self-talk and continue to work with others, to have my team, I'm going to use the word and instead of but. So I continue to have relationships with myself, with my emotions, with my failures, as well as with others. So that's respecting myself. So journaling may help you. You may need a mentor, or once again, those friends from your formative years when you were sort of separating and choosing your identity away from your family, those friends can give us a way to see ourselves and see our strengths. Some of us don't even have permission to, in our minds, to sort of pump ourselves up and see that strength. So nurturing a positive view of ourselves. And I change the word problems to challenges, so I can work with the challenges that come my way. I can resolve them. So reframing, once again, I'm going to pull back, see the wide angle so I can see the resources both mentally, emotionally, and functionally in my world. So if I don't know someone to help me in a challenging situation, people often call me, Beth does, and I can find someone and think about it. It is my strength, and it also is my weakness. I avoid, once again, using that word should. I listen, and listening is part of listening to what we say to ourselves, as well as what comes out of our mouth to others, or what we're receiving from others. Is someone saying to us, this is the worst thing that ever happened? Can I say, oh, I remember once reframing something. We got a new puppy and the puppy ran away, was exploring the neighborhood, got out, got too far away. And we were looking around, and one family member said, we'll never find her. And I said, well, then we should stop looking. Now he's being a little playful and silly. And the reality was that the dog had already run home through the back door as we were walking on the roadside at the front side of the house. Some of us do have these perspectives and temperaments. If we look at our children's literature that has stood the test of time, from Winnie the Pooh to Harry Potter, we know that we do know characters who have, say, a Ron Weasley or an Eeyore mindset, and then those who have the Piglet, Tigger, Harry Potter, or other open and lighter mindset. So we may borrow some habits from people who have that experience. So can we find the meaning? Meaning and purpose is so important to our happiness and what we're doing. So if we take something such as the death of a family member or someone close to us, so grief, we do find that there is resilience, and the people who are resilient in the aspects of grief, and it could be grief over a flood, a disaster, or someone passing away. we see that those people do find purpose and meaning in their lives, and that becomes an important part of their healing and happiness. So we can reframe, once again, pull back the big picture, or as the book said, don't sweat the small stuff, and most of it's small stuff. We can question the premise of what someone is telling us. So this is the worst thing. It'll never work. We can question the premise of the question, or the premise of the statement. What is someone really saying? Some of us need to practice listening very carefully because they become habitual, and it can be a contagion, the negative aspect, if we're around people who don't have resiliency. So learning from our past experiences. The 12-step programs say it pretty well. Take what you like and leave the rest, whether it's Al-Anon, AA, or any of the other 12-step programs. And that's the beauty of the programs, is that people aren't alone, and we have people to help. We can listen to other stories and sort of try on and say, hey, maybe I'll try that. So we get stuck. Our strategies are habits. So remember, if A happens, try out some Bs, have different strategies. What worked? What did you do? And doing the same thing and expecting different results isn't going to work. So you got to change the B, so you have a different resilient C. And what perhaps also the evaluation, what did you do last time that perhaps you weren't ready for? You had the capability, you didn't have the capacity to use that ability to be resilient. You didn't have the resources. So maybe you can use it again. And maybe it is writing a letter. Maybe it is spending some money to learn some software. Maybe you can try going to school or learning a new technique. And you didn't have enough time, or you didn't know how to make your habits, so you committed to the practice of learning online to improve your skills. So we can figure out what worked, what didn't work. And once again, sometimes the help from a mentor or someone who has perspective holds us accountable. Maybe in the health perspective, our resilience is really hampered because we don't have good sleep habits, sleep hygiene, and we might need a different way. Maybe we need a CPAP, something to help us breathe, or room darkening curtains to help us sleep better. So we can get different perspectives, have a wealth of knowledge, so we can gather those perspectives for continuous improvement and critical thinking, so we get over the assumptions or some of our ego protective thinking, which we want to be right and we want to be a relationship. And sometimes we do the same thing just to say we're right, and we commit to failure. I've teased a little bit, and once again, comments or questions, feel free to chat in. Some of us are committed to having learning as a regular practice, and gaining skills and knowledge can come from all sorts of places. It could be from a friend or a new acquaintance you meet at the dog park. It could be it could be shared, reciprocal learning. It could be online. We have Coursera, you have the university, TED Talks. I've known people, participants who tell me they commit to listening to 20 minutes of a TED Talk every day. So that means they're continuing learning, and guess what? They can't perseverate on anxiety or live in the past and carry a grudge. Their mind starts munching on this new knowledge. Curiosity is, it's in my personal mission statement, Pollack, the C in Pollack stands for curiosity. I want to continually challenge myself, both so I develop different neural pathways so I'll age better, and just because it's interesting in life and I do have more resources. So it was no surprise that during lockdown, so many people learned new games, new crafts, tried gardening, all sorts of new things as they committed. Puzzles. We really challenged our brains in many ways during COVID. I've talked about mistakes plenty. Make your own meme. So I'm giving you another to do there, because we can't do a don't. So learn from your mistakes, have that, you can borrow, that's silly. Or it could be not yet, find some things. Certainly we have abundant experience and examples in the fields of science where people, and mathematics as well, people try, they research, whether it was pharmaceuticals or whatever, and keep trying, and they have many more failures than they have successes. So we can learn from the mistakes and see that as step at a time. Now, for those of us, some of us will physically travel. They expect the numbers to be so big this year. So that is wonderful. Some of us, we could just travel in our own neighborhoods. We could travel in our backyard, state parks, lakes, not even go very far away to travel. We have plenty of riches in our communities that we might not know, historic places and the like. So we can also travel in our mind through literature. I love to travel in my mind through historical fiction. So I learn more. So I actually get the stories of resilience from others and get inspired. Our hobbies, take appropriate risks. This is going to feel different than others. Those of us on the more impulsive side, maybe more outgoing side, may have do things that seem very risky. As I said, Jessica Pan in her Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come, gave herself a really big risk to try to be or do extroverted things. It felt, the emotional piece felt like a very big risk. And once again, it's a very funny book, so I encourage it. Perfect for summer reading and learning. How do we set new goals? One step at a time. We could make it visual. As you're looking at gaining new skills and knowledge, do you know how you are or reflect as a learner? Do you learn by reading? Do you learn by teaching and doing? Do you need color or physical impact? So some of us, writing with pen on paper is a way our creative ideas get out. Check it out. Our children have much to tell us in learning and teach us. So get around. I think those kids who are 7 and under, even your teens, have much to teach you. So check them out. Our connections, once again, the difference between introversion and extroversion is a matter of scale, and a scale of what sort of re-energizes you or doesn't. Extroverts are more comfortable and get energized by bigger groups and gatherings. Introverts, that would be very exhausting. Maybe the workday is exhausting. And so it's going to be 1, 2, 3 people, maybe around a fire pit. Just watching fireflies is how they're going to regenerate and reboot. So expressing thank you, gratitude is a powerful sort of lubricator, negotiator, team builder. A podcast I love because it reflects some of the reasons why some of us aren't resilient is Brene Brown's Dare to Lead podcast. You may know Brene Brown, who is a shame researcher. She's had other podcasts as well. Her interview with Doug Conant, who had headed Campbell Soup as CEO and Nabisco at times when those organizations and businesses were having challenges. He wrote tens of thousands of thank you notes. So listen to that. It's Doug Conant, C-O-N-A-N-T, and Brene Brown, B-R-O-W-N, Dare to Lead podcast. Helping others, teaching, doing, demonstrating that for children in your life. The walls are watching, whether it's your children or others. As Mr. Rogers said, particularly when things are tough or bad or sad, look for the helpers. He was really right. Communicating effectively. Many of us listen to respond rather than understand. Once again, this is where curiosity helps me be resilient. In that I understand, I learn differently, I ask a lot of questions, and that may seem insubordinate to others. I ask questions out of curiosity. It's also, as a recovering perfectionist, it's the way I've compensated over the years for auditory processing issues. None of us can see the invisible in others. So where we have a perspective, once again, pulling back the camera, of acceptance that we can't see the invisible, where other and how other people's minds work. If we assume the positive and positive outcome, we leave place and space to communicate effectively. We often confuse efficiency with effectively. So particularly if we're frustrated or angry, we think if we talk loudly and quickly and move our arms, make ourselves big, we'll get our point across, we'll get people to agree with us. We might even say, you have to understand. Often, as I look at those words and resilience, does that really mean someone wants me to understand? Or do they want me to agree so their ego feels safe as being right and in community? We can question these things. So slowing down is the counterintuitive way, so against what we think, to communicate effectively and efficiently. So taking those few breaths and really being mindful of what you say as a pause word to gather your thoughts. You may have observed, I say certainly a lot. It helps me gather my thoughts and give me pace. Some of us may have learned the expression, I'm sorry, but we're not really sorry. Often it's a thought gatherer. So get in relationship with your body, put your hand on your abdomen, and either have a non-committal word like certainly to gather your thoughts. We can think faster than we can speak, so we may need that pause and practice it. And we can certainly be more resilient. And when we can speak and hold our posture openly, we can receive more information. So we can look at ourselves, and are we communicating effectively? Can we be resilient in the moment? I remember a moment when I was in a meeting feeling passionately about something, and I leaned into the Zoom camera and I did my arms and I talked fast and loud. And to be resilient and resourceful in that moment, I realized I needed to talk to myself and maintain my own humor and say, get a grip, Beth, and take some breaths. Speak lower and slower and listen to understand. I didn't have to agree. It was a committee. I could let things go. So humor, I mentioned sarcasm. Be mindful of sarcasm. We know the tone, and we know that 3 or 4-year-olds can imitate that tone. Oh, I'd love to. And it's really insincere. So play and use authenticity. Certainly gossip, which also people can gossip and pretend they're having humor and sarcasm, are really caustic to our communities and really just corrode holes in sort of the reservoir of resilience. So there was recently on the news this morning a red coat from Delta Airlines in Atlanta, where thousands of flights and passengers will go through this weekend. I'm speaking right before Memorial Day weekend. She's a woman in charge of sort of making exceptions, getting people to get the service they need from the airlines. And the reporter noticed she smiled. And she said, yeah, I smile. Sometimes I'm smiling and I'm just giving myself some time and keeping that relationship going with the customer, even if I have to tell them no. It was fascinating. So look for the Red Coats article and see how these people who deal with in real-time situations have mastered resilience in the workplace. So spend time with people who are witty. Witty is like playing with bubbles, playing on a rainy day. Maybe you're having that family gathering and it's too rainy and cold outside, and so you blow up some balloons and you play volleyball with balloons, or you play the floor is lava. Playful. Wit is playful. That's a powerful sense of humor. Once again, being silly, dress up, singing, dancing, We can, looking at pictures, sharing the stories of our mistakes and laughing at ourselves are great practices intergenerationally so that we can maintain resilience as a group. So reframe, pull back the camera. Personally, I even have a little meme that I say to myself, pulling back the camera. How would America's Funniest Videos or some situation comedy, The Office, or whatever else is on television or streaming, how would this be scripted to make fun of the situation in real time? So I reframe myself. It helps me get that objectivity that this is a moment in time and I'll get through this. This time will be over soon. So take action. Mindfulness may help you take action and be available to yourself. So I also recommend Into the Magic Shop by James Doty. He learned meditation at 12 years old, and also how to set intentions. He's now a Stanford neurosurgeon studying this stuff. So it's a fascinating, another good summer read. That is an easy bedtime or beach time read. So look at releasing worrying and blaming. We may need some prescriptive cognitive behavioral therapy to help that. Our journaling, if you do tend to be anxious and we want to keep our health, our physiological part of our resilience capabilities available to us, you may want to do that sort of judging or anxious writing, particularly if you're still at the why did I do that phase, I shouldn't have. Do that before bedtime, maybe do that right after supper, or maybe at a lunch break, so it's not right before you're going to sleep where it might disrupt your sleep with negative thoughts and encourage that spiral of thinking. Complex problems, we could say, what next? What can I do now? Choose your questions. Remember, I do encourage, avoid the why questions. Why am I doing this? Why did this happen to me? Why questions usually aren't going to lead us to resilient mindset. Why is great for mission, not so great for a resilient mindset. Patience, some of us, remember, our traits stay relatively stable. Some of us are laugh. We see it as babies, laugh more easily as babies. We're ticklish. Some of us are more patient. You might have had some great role models of patience. I know I did, and resilience as well. Take time to exercise. That's purposeful movement. Move your body. It could be doing 100 jumping jacks or something like that. Certainly if you're on social media, things I like on social media is having, and I've fooled my algorithm on Instagram and Facebook, is to have the algorithm give me exercises for strength building, balance, things like that. That I can do in a short period of time and do throughout the day rather than, an hour or two at the gym. If swimming's your thing, go swim. So it's great. I know people who've done that every day of their life since their youth and are very fit because of it. Colorful food. Summer's here. It's much easier to eat a plate full of colorful from the earth food. So do that. Do understand that stress is related to our eating. We get a bad taste in our mouth when we're anxious or afraid. Adrenaline goes in our saliva because digestion isn't important. So we either lose our appetite or we go for those fat, salty, and sweet comfort foods. So your stress management is going to impact your nutrition. Exercise is going to boost endorphins, which will impact your nutrition. Sleep also, when we don't have enough long-term sleep, third stage sleep, we are not going to be as emotionally regulated. The amygdala, that's our fight, flight, or freeze reptile part of our brain, as people call it, cannot talk to the prefrontal cortex, or the prefrontal cortex cannot say to the amygdala, that's not important. Don't sweat the small stuff. So taking care of you is important. You have Kipro. You're not alone. So please, please, please Tour our website today, tour it with a partner or a colleague so you can see the resources you have. You're not alone. And I've given you many ideas and books to read over the summer, or maybe you're going to make a practice of not being on that social media and reading 15 or 20 minutes before bedtime. The books I've suggested are great for that. Look at all the ways we can help you, and that's what we're here to do. Your comments and feedback are really important to me, so capture this QR code. You can hit pause if you're on the recording to capture it. We want to continue to work on our programs, make them better and better. If you have suggestions, we'd love to hear it. And if there's any other comments or questions, I will hang on and answer them. And I'm stopping the recording right now.